on clauses 107 to 161 and Schedule 2. And the question is that Part 4 stand part. I call Kris.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Can I think, hopefully in anticipation of the Minister answering a question around clauses 132 and 133 in Part 4 of the bill. I think these go to questions around times where fence inspectors can enter properties. And in a previous piece of legislation before the House, I think under the Security Intelligence Bill, which was passed recently, in that piece of legislation, maraes were singled out, and for a very good reason. But I just think the question again needs to be put on the record to clarify that it is for the same reason that under clause 133 marae are singled out as to separate from any old dwelling, as to consent from occupiers to under a warrant to enter that land or building. 133(4) also goes to that when a warrant is exercised on a marae, that as far as practicable, the fire and emergency service staff must take into account the kawa or protocol of a particular marae. So my first question is this being singled out because we designate them as special, as it was in the Security Intelligence Bill? The second question is, I guess, an assurance that the communication will be sent to fence officers that the protocol of the marae must be adhered to in reasonable circumstances, because I think that's a very important part of the legislation to make sure that we get that right. I'm assuming these clauses are for a good reason, and that we're respectful of what happens in the marae and the protocols around the marae, but just a very short call to the Minister to put on the record that we are singling them out for a positive reason and not a negative one.
Honourable Peter Dunn.
Mr Chairman, in the absence of any other speaker, I'm happy to give the member